In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Attention Patriots. Red Nation Rising Radio is about to begin.
Please return your Republic to its original position and prepare for takeoff.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
And we are rising. We are America, Red Nation Rising. Welcome to the Reddest Hour on radio. If you cannot hear me, let me know in the chat room. That's one great thing about our chat room. So, hi peeps. This is Lou. You guys know me. If you've checked my Twitter profile, you can see me. I'm not a shoe. I'm not a Muppet. I'm not a logo. That's actually me, and I hope that nobody has fallen off of their chairs seeing my actual face for the first time on my Twitter profile at Bell with an E_River. So glad you guys have all joined us tonight, and thanks for being in the chat room. Look forward to having your questions for Cameron Gray, who will be calling in. He is known most for his work on NRA News, but he is also a bit of an expert, in my opinion, from what I've seen on Twitter. Regarding Israel, he knows a lot about Iran. He gets the culture differences, and he gets kind of the new American approach to the culture. And we're going to talk about some really interesting things, and thanks for letting me know that you can hear me good. So shout out to all of our Twitter teams that have boy, we've had some interesting things happen in the past week, and you guys have taken it all on the chin and really reacted to some crazy incidences as true professionals. And I've told some of you this before one-on-one, and I'm going to tell the audience and everybody listening right now that I've worked with people who are professionals and get paid, make a lot of money, and are seen as experts in the field of social media. And you all do as well, in some cases a whole lot better than any of those people did. You amaze me every day, the things that you know, the way that you handle things, and the professional approach that you take to what we're doing. And I believe it's because you're passionate about it and you know that it means something and that we want to make it mean something. So this is a shout out to everybody, how well you do what you do, how dedicated you are to doing it, and just how much we love you for wanting to make a difference in your country and choosing us to be the catalyst that you use to do that. We really, really appreciate it. And some great videos coming from you guys, wonderful memes coming from you guys. And one thing that I love is how our team can take a really dour topic, or something really that we're going to talk about tonight, which is the Iran deal, which is really scary, and make it a little less scary and not necessarily fun, but take some of the fear out of it at any rate. And really love it that you do that. So we're going to be looking to make an impact on Congress, if Congress will do anything. They've been a little bit behind, and I don't even know if I would call it behind. They're just not doing anything. And even telling us that doing things is an exercise in futility. I'm not really sure what we're paying them for, but I know that you guys heard that Mitch McConnell said that voting on Planned Parenthood one way or the other, or voting to defund it, was an exercise in futility. So bringing a vote to the floor for the majority leader of the Senate is an exercise in futility. I can't wrap my head around that one. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but our guest is calling in, and Cameron's on the phone, and we're going to cut to a break real quick, and we were going to come back with Cameron Gray. But try to wrap your head around the fact that the majority leader in the Senate feels that it's an exercise in futility to bring a vote to the floor. It's sad, people. It is just sad. Going to break. We'll be right back.
This is JD.
And this is Stacy.
Join us Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, for Game On. Remember,
lock up the children and the old folks.
Game On, the home of libertative conservatism.
Where no one is safe, and no one is spared, not even the hosts.
Oh, that was supposed to be a spin cycle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We love you anyway. Right round, baby.
Self-monitoring
right
Ebola radio strikes again.
Anyway.
Anybody see the host monkey?
Today.
Where's the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? For God's sake, I need an antidote. Just do your rant. Let's pop out of the segment.
Find us on Twitter at JD and Stacy.
You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
We are today facing a full-fledged constitutional crisis. The answer is not a monarch from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down.
K98Talk.com, a leader in internet radio. So grab your seatbelts and take the ride of your life on K98Talk.com.
Hello, Cameron. Are you still with us?
Yes, hello.
Hey, thanks for calling in. Just as we were cutting to break, I think that was probably really good timing. And you might have heard us talking about our Senate Majority Leader. And we got some comments just before we get into what we're going to talk about. A couple of really funny things. Dr. Randy Arrington is pointing out again that the real exercise in futility was probably putting Mitch McConnell in office to begin with. Voting him in again might have been the real exercise in futility. But thank you for joining us tonight. I mentioned as we were coming in, I mentioned your real job, but you're not here to talk about your real job.
Yes, one of my many other jobs.
Right, exactly. So tell us, what your interest in the area is that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about America, Israel, Iran, the Middle East, and the clashing cultures that we've got going on.
Well, I'm a conservative Jew, and as we all know, that's like being a unicorn these days. Unfortunately, the majority of American Jewry is left-wing, Democrat-leaning, and no matter how much the President and this administration has betrayed Israel, has insulted Benjamin Netanyahu, has taken for granted this gigantic voting bloc that they have amassed themselves, this administration is an absolute danger, and that's a lot of where my politics come from. A lot of my interests start with that, and then we just start with all this, what's going on around the world. You look at what's going on with the Yazidi. You look at what's going on with Coptic Christians. You look at what's going on with persecution around the world. One of my big topics is people who are persecuted, and another thing that this administration ignores. This administration sides with Turkey over the Kurds. This administration is always on the wrong side of history, always. And no matter what they do, it always ends up turning out to be the wrong thing. And when you look at this Iran deal, Obamacare is one thing, and sure, if you want to destroy 1/7 of the nation's economy, fine, we can hopefully undo it one day. But this Iran deal puts Israel and our only ally in the Middle East, or even used to be ally, not much anymore, behind the scenes, I would imagine, in mortal danger, absolute mortal danger, to the point where if I'm Israel and if I'm Benjamin Netanyahu and I've been insulted by this president time and time and time again, this deal goes through, which it's probably going to go through. We can't kid ourselves. We can't get Republicans to stop this deal. Israel's going to have to strike on their own. I don't know how we're going to avoid this, and that's going to start. But God knows what that's going to start. So I'm very concerned about Israel, of course. I'm very concerned about the fact that we've completely destroyed our relationship with them. I'm very concerned about the fact that we have a GOP that doesn't seem to be able to get its act together, and I'm not at all confident that we can take the White House back. I hope we do. I want to. But if we don't take this White House back and we continue down this path of absolute inept, quote-unquote leaders, imagine Hillary Clinton as president. Just imagine. Let's say, she skates through all this crap and every day there's more revelations about her. But imagine President Hillary Clinton and her Russian reset button, which obviously broke a long time ago. Well, this country's in real danger. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm worried about. And I think a lot of people are worried about. But, Lou, not enough people are worried about. I know you and I know the Red Nation audience and your unbelievable, your loyal followers and listeners and tweeters and writers. They know about this. But who's really, really following this? Every time I go to the trending hashtag list, I know I'm 44 years old, but I think I know pop culture pretty well. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know what people are talking about. Last night, apparently, the show Empire, something happened, and that becomes this trending hashtag. Where's the trending hashtag for the boys in Afghanistan who are being raped, that our military is telling our military members to look the other way.
And that's what
where's the hashtag with people like that?
Promised the chat room that we were going to start off with that story, right? So, but you explained very well why you're here, because the people in the chat room that know me know that you just agreed with me on absolutely everything. And I mean, call me selfish, but I love to have people on the show that agree with me. Right? So, I mean, I'm not stupid. So,
let's find one thing we got to find one thing we disagree about.
Well, we might. I did. I wrote my senior thesis on nuclear proliferation, which blew the minds of all my professors, and I could hardly find somebody that would be my advisor to do it. But
right.
The one thing that I learned was that however close they tell you, and this happened, nuclear power after nuclear power after nuclear power, however close they tell you what they are, you can cut it in half and cut it in half again.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Right.
Especially when you look at the bad actors around the world who would be more than happy to see Israel go away. When you have the United Nations, and actually, something that's really disappointing to me is I'm here in Washington. We just had the Pope here for a couple of days. The Vatican just recognized Palestine as a state. You have United Nations the other day. They raised the Palestinian and the Vatican flags at the United Nations. We have the United Nations. We have a majority of the world that hates Israel, would love Israel to go away. There's a lot of people who would help Iran get there. So yes, you cut it by half again, and half again too. I think
probably
we are a lot closer than anybody will ever admit, because no matter what they say, it's never. It's like when they give the budget for a bridge project.
Yes.
You can multiply that by like 2.5. At
right.
least.
Yeah. They don't sit down with you.
They blow smoke up your butt all day.
They don't sit down with you to begin with unless they know these bad actors that are trying to become nuclear powers don't sit down with you to talk to begin with until they're already pretty sure that they can turn one around pretty quickly. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but you can't believe Iran. They've already...
But you should. But Lou, that's the problem. It's not like you're trying to scare anybody. Well, we should be scaring people. There's people who aren't scared enough. It's not. I don't want people running around the street, running in circles and screaming. But there needs to be some sort of fear, a little part of fear in everyone's there. There's so many people go through life like, everything's fine. President Obama will protect us. The Democrats will protect us. We're all set. We are being ruled by the most incompetent people who have ruled us in generations, maybe ever. Look at John Kerry. Look at the idiots, literally idiots he surrounds himself with. The Jen Psaki's of the world. These people who have no business being spokespeople for this nation, this great nation, that no matter what happens and no matter who leads it, it's still a great nation. But look at what's going on with these people. Look at Hillary Clinton. Look at what she did. Look at, of course, Obama. Person after person after person. There isn't, right now, I can't think of a single department here in Washington that hasn't been involved in a scandal. You have people on the other side who say, this has been a great scandal-free administration. You can name pick any three-letter department here in Washington. There's been a scandal involved. No one knows that. No one cares. And even when you can present everyone with as much evidence against Hillary Clinton as possible. It doesn't matter. People are so bought into this crap and this, she's owed it, and it's her turn.
That's crazy, and that's something we should never say in America. Never in America should we ever say it's ever anybody's turn. You don't get a turn. You prove yourself. You run for office. You get elected. That's America. And so that's just a crazy term. So I promised you, and I promised our chat room, we're going to talk about what the article from the Daily Beast. So let's start with that, because this is all about a culture war, really, or a clash of cultures.
Yeah.
So you sent that to me. You tell me about that article.
Yeah, no, this article is unreal. And if you want, I'm not good at talking and typing, so if somebody wants to put it in the chat room, I think they should, because everyone needs to read this article. There's also another article in the New York Times, and in a second I'll put it in there too, But what's happening is there's a special forces. His name was Dan Quinn, and he was relieved of his command because he and another guy in Afghanistan, they don't give the details, knowing what a Green Beret would and should do, beat the crap out of an Afghan commander, one of many, which over there it's a cultural thing. They keep boys. They have boys. They're called bachabazi, and they are just little boy slaves, and it's the mass rape of children. And Quinn, and he was also joined the fight by another Marine. They got in trouble for probably beating the crap out of this guy. Really, when you think about it, this guy is lucky to be alive. Could you imagine? We are right now, talk about culture war. We're in this culture war on college campuses, to where people as high up as senators say, if whatever a woman says happened on a sexual encounter, always believe the woman. And that's fine. If you want to do, we can debate that all day. But we have a culture war here where we're supposed to believe every sexual assault that happens, and we're supposed to, this Emma Solkowitz, mattress girl at NYU, destroy this man that she accused of raping her, even though hearing after hearing after hearing showed there was no evidence. We're supposed to believe the word of anyone who cries sexual assault. But we're also told, our military is told by their higher-ups, don't get involved. Look the other way. This is their culture. This is what they do. And the other day I was flying out of Washington, and every once in a while there's an honor flight that comes in to Reagan National. And whenever I'm lucky enough to see it, I stand there for the entire time and watch it. And I'm looking at these men and a couple of women. I'm thinking to myself, because this story, I was thinking about this story for the last few days. I'm thinking to myself, could you imagine what the greatest generation would have done if they'd seen this? And what the greatest generation's commanders would have done to support them. But now we're in a time where, this is what they do. This is their culture. Let's not get involved. Look the other way. When you have people who are looking the other way from child rape, what the hell are we as a people?
Can I draw a historical? Can I draw a historical analysis for you though? And it's not a pretty one, but people in Europe turned away from the Jewish ghettos in Germany for a really long time as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd like to draw that analogy. I think it's appropriate.
No, it's 100% appropriate. It's cliche, but those who forget history are condemned to repeat it, and over and over again. And this story, something about this story has gotten me so rattled because we're in the middle of so much garbage right now, and we're in the middle of so much nonsense, here and abroad. But this story, when we're telling Marines, Green Berets, the toughest, most valiant heroes, hey, if you see some guy raping a young boy, or if it's like 3 or 4 boys in his bed, it's their deal. Don't get involved. It's not your business. And then just as you were introducing me, the Wall Street Journal tweets a story: U.S. Allied military review new options for Afghan pullback. Some officials worried proposed White House troop drawdown leaves Afghan government vulnerable to military attacks. So what they're saying is they're going to probably keep troops in Afghanistan. So we're always, for the foreseeable future, we're going to be stuck in this hellhole, and until we have new leadership at the very top, we're going to be, party and witness to the rape of children. It's just so beyond me, and I don't understand.
It is.
I really can't wrap my head around this one. I've been thinking about it so much.
I have a really hard time wrapping my head around it too, and I think that one of the problems that we might have, Cameron, is that the years in which we grew up, our formative years were filled with Ronald Reagan. and George H.W. Bush. And that was a completely different America. It was a completely different, it's like night and day, the America of that era.
And think about it. We just had the Pope here in Washington. Pope's now in New York. Think of all the iconic pictures of Ronald Reagan and John Paul II. And now look at Obama and Pope Francis. How much that we have changed and the world has changed. And right now, the Pope comes, and I'm not a Catholic, and I understand people see things differently, but the Pope addresses Congress today, and I read a few places, didn't say God or Jesus, and his big message is climate change. And he's talking about the blood of the arms industry. Well, now, if you're in America and you're the Pope, I would imagine one of your biggest issues is abortion. Historically, the Catholic Church has been very against abortion. How do you not call out Planned Parenthood? How do you not talk about the bloodshed of what they're doing? I mean, it's one of the biggest stories before he got here in this country, the debate over abortion and Planned Parenthood.
Right.
How do you not call them out by name? How do you have time to call out the arms industry? How do you have time to, so much time, between today and yesterday, and I'm sure there'll be more of it on climate change. This trope that is just, this climate change is, how the Pope is concerned about that, and our president says he acted too late on it. President Obama says, I acted too late on climate change. As if when he was elected, the glaciers between now and then would have changed, or the seas would have been different.
That's really, yeah.
We're talking billions of years of what actually happens with climate change, and he's saying he acted too late. So because he acted too late, I imagine he personally is responsible for the death of many polar bears and lots of ice melting. I mean, just our president of the United States is actually saying nonsense like that.
I know, yeah, and it is complete nonsense, and he says it as if we're all supposed to believe it because it came out of his mouth. But let me tell you something about the Pope's speech, which was really interesting to me, and I think that, because I am Catholic, and of course I watched the speech. And the speech as it was reported in the news was a completely different speech than the one that I listened to. So it's really...
and I'm glad you said that, because I'm not I'm no expert on religion, but I caught parts of it and I tweeted some stuff about it. And a lot of Catholics were like very offended because, people are going to hear what they want to hear and understand.
Right.
But when you actually look at the transcript, he doesn't... And the one thing I thought was interesting too is, there's a huge debate now in this country, of course around the world, about gay marriage, right? The Supreme Court just said gay marriage in all 50 states. I would imagine the Pope would come out would say something about gay marriage. He's so passionate about climate change, but what's the Pope think about gay marriage?
He didn't.
He said something. He had one statement about the family and marriage.
He did.
I'm an alien and I landed on Earth today, and I have no idea what the Pope stands for, and I watched that speech. I literally, if I didn't know, I have no idea what the Pope thinks about gay marriage.
Right.
Well, didn't you think the people should know how the Pope explicitly cares about gay marriage in a speech to Congress? But he's explicit about change. He's explicit about arms. I just don't understand. That the Pope is and refugees and immigration. I mean, this guy he's like the social justice warrior of popes.
He definitely is, and I won't argue with that. What didn't come across in the news, and I searched several articles for it, it was never mentioned. He spent the first 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even longer, of that speech talking about our founding fathers and America being the hope for the world. And that was not reported anywhere. And that was really interesting to me. So while the narrative that's being driven in the media is that the Pope hates capitalism and thinks we should all be socialists, he actually really believes that the American experiment is far greater than anyone would have you think he believes. That was really interesting to me, but we don't want to get into the Pope. Yeah, we don't want to get into that, and we don't want to get into that because that's not what you're here to talk about. But it's the difference between what actually takes place And then what the narrative in the media is, I think, is what's the really interesting part.
No, absolutely, and it's funny because you have a mainstream media who really has no use for religion. I mean, let's be honest. You look at what happened in Indiana, and there, with Memories Pizza, and anything that had to do with religious freedom. Religious people, people practicing Catholics or Jews. The mainstream media has no use for religion. But all of a sudden, the left-leaning Pope is in town. Wow, the Pope did this, the Pope did that.
Yes.
Every time I watched CNN, I thought Anderson Cooper was going to pass out because he was so excited. Wolf Blitzer is just like drooling. All of a sudden, this is great. Oh, God, and
I know.
I love religion.
And they only hear what they want to hear that he says, but I will agree with you that he was nowhere near as strong as he should have been as the head of the Catholic Church, and considering our faith and our dogma, our religion, the foundation of the sanctity of life. He was nowhere near as strong as he should have been, particularly on Planned Parenthood, and I was disappointed about that. Even though, as a Catholic, I hear him from a very positive perspective, I still didn't hear what I wanted to hear right there, and I was really disappointed. We're going to take another...
Lou, as a Catholic, then, as a Catholic, has he explicitly said he's against gay marriage and he's against abortion in any other speeches?
No. He talks about the sanctity of life and he talks about the sanctity of marriage, but he doesn't come out specifically. He's reached out to those groups instead. And I've also talked about the Council of Catholic Bishops who allowed him to come to Washington and be greeted by people who represent groups that go against the church. And this was a really disappointing thing for me too. So I've got a lot of mixed feelings on this whole thing, and a lot of us Catholics are just kind of, we don't really know what to do about it. and my mother-in-law would cringe if she could hear what my husband said. I shouldn't have said that out loud. I hope she's not listening. So we're going to cut to one more quick break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about, speaking of Christians, you wanted to talk about Yazidis and the Kurds and some of the persecuted Christians in the Middle East, right? So we want to talk about that a little bit. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
K98Talk.com, a leader in internet radio. So grab your seatbelts and take the ride of your life on K98Talk.com.
This is JD.
And this is Stacy.
Join us Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern for Game On. Remember,
lock up the children and the old folks.
Game On, the home of libertative conservatism.
Where no one is safe and no one is spared. Not even the hosts.
Oh, that was supposed to be a spin cycle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We love you anyway. Right round, baby.
Self-monitoring
right
Ebola radio strikes again.
Anyway.
Anybody see the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? For God's sake, I need an antidote. Just do your rant. Let's pop out of the segment.
Find us on Twitter at JD and Stacy.
You're listening to K98Talk.com. The internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get sad again.
Doggone it, Cameron, I played the wrong break. I wanted to play the one with Sheriff Clark's Second Amendment on it for you. Sorry. You with me?
We had Sheriff Clark on our show today on NRA News today. He's fantastic.
He is amazing. Love that man. So let's talk a little bit about, we could go on forever about refugees and, persecuted Christians and, people coming across borders that may or may not be, but things are getting pretty nutty in Syria and Iraq and, besides Iran and the nuclear deal. And this just compounds the situation and makes it that much more dangerous. One thing we said we'd talk about is, I think everybody in our audience is really smart enough to know, but let's just step back for a minute. Consider Israel and their geopolitical position. They are surrounded by their enemies. And in the meantime, everything in those countries is blowing up.
Well, it's blowing up big time, and you look at what's going on with these refugees, and the fact that right now the Hajj is going on in Saudi Arabia, and we saw that horrible story that 700 plus people were killed in the stampede. But you look at the pictures of the Hajj, and there was actually pictures before this of the 3 million tents that are plumbed. They have air conditioning. They're the perfect place for refugees to go. But not a single refugee is allowed to go to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, to Oman, to any of these Gulf states. They're forced to go the other way. And Saudi Arabia, they say, okay, we won't take you in, but hey, Germany, we're going to build you 300 more mosques. Doesn't that strike you as weird?
Yeah, a little. Yeah, that's a little bit weird. Yeah,
they have these absolutely perfect, usable tents where at least 3 million refugees could go. They don't want any part of them. Zero. None. And it's their same religion. They want to send these people northward to Europe to literally invade every part of Eastern and Western Europe.
And then build mosques for them.
And the problems that are being caused, there was another article from the Gatestone Institute just listing the amount of rape going on in Germany right now. And a lot of it is ascribed to refugees. I don't know what it is. There's so much. We talk about this culture. We go back to the colleges. We talk about the idea of the fact that some people think there's a rape culture, which is, I can't imagine anyone in their right mind would be supportive of a rape culture. But you look at a rape culture over there. We just talked about the story about these Afghan, these young boys. You look at the rape, the absolute. Right now, we have about at least 3,000 Yazidi girls or women who are in the slave markets. There was a story I saw. This girl, girls get raped about 30 times in the morning, and they beg to be bombed. They want to die so badly than be raped over and over again. And you look at the refugee crisis. Look at the Yazidi. For over a year now, since the siege, since Mount ISIS surrounded them and made so many of them, hide up on Mount Sinjar. There was picture after picture. Now, remember, what started the worldwide interest in the refugees? A picture of a dead boy on a beach. Yeah. There were so many pictures of dead children on the top of Mount Sinjar. There were stories of parents who cut open their arms to give their children blood to drink because there was nothing left. They were dying, and the administration had some airdrops, which went the wrong way and went to ISIS, most of it. Now the administration has done a few airstrikes here and there, but if it wasn't for the Kurds, if it wasn't for those brave warriors, men and women, the Yazidi would have no hope. And once again, like I said before, Obama picks the wrong choice. He goes against the Kurds and picks Turkey to back. But the problem is, of course, the picture of that child was horrific. But there have been so many pictures of Yazidis that were horrific. And a couple of weeks before this whole crisis started in Europe, there were stories about how America and Canada wouldn't take any Yazidis. They wouldn't take any Yazidis in. The Yazidis fleeing for their lives from literal genocide at the hands of ISIS, we wouldn't take them in. Now, why does one picture of one dead boy on a beach change the whole world? Now Canada, they're in the middle. Actually, tonight, they're candidates for their leader. Tonight is their French language debate. They're up there, and the refugees have now become an issue in the Canadian elections, which are going on as we speak. They'll elect a new leader early next month. You know, before that picture, do you think the plight of the Yazidi, the refugees trying to flee ISIS, would have been a campaign issue in Canada? Hell no. But now it's the conservative, Stephen Harper, the conservatives say, now what are you going to do about these refugees? You going to take them in? What are you going to do? You have this country. We're going to take in first it's 10,000, then it's 50,000, and God knows what the final number is going to be. What was wrong with those refugees? Why were they ignored? Literally ignored. And you want to talk about rape culture and feminism? Where the hell are the Western feminists? Here's women who are being sold in literal slave markets, being traded back and forth as prizes. There was the people who could recite the Quran best. Their prize was a girl. I mean, I'm talking girls. 7-year-old girls, 8-year-old girls are being raped and sold. There's price lists, markets. Where are the feminists? Where have they been the whole time?
They won't talk about it. They won't talk about it. We've actually had, some friends of ours from a different radio network had invited a feminist on to talk about trafficking. And when the feminist found out that she was going on a conservative radio show, she canceled and refused to talk to two conservatives that they knew she was a progressive and a feminist when they invited her. They didn't mind. She had something to say about trafficking and child slavery. But the feminists won't talk to anybody else about it. So you have to be, pro-abortion, pro-choice, pro-whatever in order for them to even have a conversation with you about it.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you bring that up. Also here in Washington, American University, there was an incident yesterday where all of the college Republicans defund Planned Parenthood flyers were taken down. And you see there's a school in Wesleyan in Connecticut. They wrote in the school paper there was a critical editorial about Black Lives Matter. They want to shut down the school newspaper. You look at a friend of mine, and I'm sure everyone who listens to R&R knows, Katie Pavlich. She speaks at the University of Delaware. The next day, they find the remnants of Chinese lanterns hanging. They blame her because they thought that her people brought nooses to intimidate the students. College campuses are less and less of a place to go if you're a conservative. If you're other than like Hillsdale, Liberty,
yeah.
if you're a conservative, college is really not a good place to be. We talk. There's always this, free exchange of ideas, and everyone's talking about this and talking about that. You have college professors who say, "Don't say God bless you when you sneeze." You have college professors saying, choose your pronoun, he or she, Z or XZ or whatever you say
that's
those.
right down the road for me. You've actually mentioned two different scenarios that happened right here in my backyard. One you were like, rape on college campus and people crying rape, and I'm right down the road from Durham, North Carolina, and Duke University, and then you mentioned UNC Chapel Hill, which is also right down the road from me, so you're just all over the Triangle schools tonight, aren't you, Cameron?
Yeah, I got to tell you, the more and more I see every time I see a UNC story, it's bad. It's really kind of disappointing because You know, I'm with the rest of the world, except in Durham. I'm kind of a Duke hater. I've never been a fan of, you know, when it comes to sports, I'm not a fan of Duke, and you always kind of like root for the underdog UNC.
Right.
But man, so many stories of UNC. It's just, you just can't believe some of the stuff that's going on college campuses. And when we're at the point where a college newspaper is threatened with, hey, you better defund this college newspaper because they printed an editorial we don't agree with. It's an editorial. Why not just write another editorial and say this is where this person's wrong? Boom, boom, and boom, and that's it.
Right. Exactly.
But no, we can't even have you can't even have that dissent out there. We can't even listen to that. No. Shut it down.
And it started in the classroom, and It started in the classroom. They shut you down in the classroom first, and then it just grew from there.
Yeah, I am very glad, as we started this interview, that as a conservative Jew, I don't go to college right now, because between being a conservative and being a Jew, you know, you look at the anti-Semitism on campus is out of control, too. I don't think I'd be very happy in school right now. And I feel bad for college kids, you know, conservative college kids. And I hope that, just like everything else, it's cyclical, and we get back to where people can have free ideas and free exchange of thought. That's what college, that's what college is supposed to be. I would never in my life see a Black Lives Matter editorial and say, "Are you kidding me? Shut down that newspaper! How dare they publish that? You disagree with something, you send your own editorial in. You don't want to watch it on TV? You don't boycott it. You change your channel. You don't like Rush Limbaugh? You don't do #StopRush. I'd say you listen to conservative, you listen to liberal talk radio, but we know that doesn't work. But you listen to something else.
Yeah, they tried that.
It's a really good business model. You know, I don't understand this censorship, and it's a very concerning time.
It is. It's a very concerning time, and I think that, you know, that we've hit on a lot of the reasons, and the culture wars that we feel here and that we see here stretch around the world. And the concept of Israel being, you know, it's almost like Israel's been put in the category with the colonialist nations, which is just insane. You know absolutely nothing about the history of Israel if that's the way that you feel about it, but they're seen as a Western country, and they have all these advantages, and their neighbors are also disadvantaged, so we should also feel sorry for them, and not Israel, the one that's outnumbered by all of these violent nations that want them to end, that don't even recognize their right to exist.
Well, you know, every time someone says that Israel is an apartheid state, I always remind them of the amount of Arabs who are in the Knesset, and I ask them, how many Jews are in Palestine's government? And it's pretty easy to shut that down.
Right, yeah, exactly. When you can get people to listen to you. But the other thing I like to say is denial is the strongest emotion of all. Nothing beats denial. Denial trumps everything.
No, absolutely. I hope people fight back. And you know, the other thing that, you know, was big, we were talking earlier. You know, we look at this story about the Marines in Afghanistan. It's one of those things, like, you read it, you don't know what to do about it, but it's the kind of story that I think everyone should read and follow, because it's not like you can just go somewhere and say, okay, I'm going to fix this. It's not, you know, like your local issue, you're going to go to the city council meeting and talk about it. I don't know what to do about this. And that's one of the things that really frustrates me about this, other than working as hard as possible to get the right people to lead our government and our military, but that's a year and a half off.
Right, but that is exactly
the change we need.
Yeah, but that's exactly.
What do we do in the meantime? How do you process this? I don't know how to process it, but I'm not gonna not read about it. I'm not gonna stop tweeting about it and telling people about it and sharing it and asking people like you to share it. But I don't know what to do about it, and that's what bothers me.
Well, and I think you're right, Cameron. I think I kind of feel the same way. You feel a little bit powerless. It's like watching a disaster unfold on television, right? So you feel a little bit helpless to do anything about it, but at the same time, talking about it and sharing it and making sure people know about it is kind of the right thing to do. And I think for one thing, we can demand some real action and real oversight from Congress. They should be starting to sweat at this point about whether or not they're going to be reelected, but they don't seem to be.
No, they don't. And as you started this, talking to Mitch McConnell, I was walking into the office the other day, and we get the paper version of Politico delivered. And it's always on the ground. I just happen to look at the cover as I walk by it. I don't extend the effort to pick it up. But on the cover, it said Joe Biden's Anita problem, referring to Anita Hill. And I was thinking to myself, you know what the problem is? The problem is that Joe Biden is still in office this long after Anita Hill. I'm not really saying that we maybe need term limits, we can discuss it, but when you look at guys like Biden and McConnell, they've been there forever. The Joe Biden-Anita problem is the fact that Joe Biden's still in office.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the biggest problem with Joe Biden and John McCain and Mitch McConnell and a lot of the other ones is that they're still there.
And I don't know what, you want to, it's like when you look at the Iran deal, it's like last November never happened. We had this incredible landslide, this what we thought was a mandate on this side of the aisle to fix things, to make things as we want, and to change things into our, as we see fit. Has anything happened? It's almost as if November never happened. And that's insulting. That's insulting to everybody who came out and voted, and that's one of the other reasons I worry about next year. Because so many people were so convinced, holy crap, look at this landslide, look what we're going to get with it. What have we gotten with it? Nothing.
Yeah, it boggles the mind why I'm speechless. And people who know me will also tell you that I am rarely speechless, but I can't explain it. I majored in it. I can't explain it. I don't know why they're not paying attention. And I know that Dr. Randy Arrington was with us earlier, and he's probably commenting in the chat room now about why they're not. He says they see us as the unwashed masses, so why would they ever listen to us? They think that they don't need to. So.
No, it's true. They come here to Washington, even some with the best of intentions, and they get here. And they get chewed up and spit out by this Washington machine. I mean, both parties. This is it. We have a very broken, corrupt Washington. And as much as I love living here, this is a cesspool. It's just a terrible, terrible place. And it's really it's not doing anything for the country. And certainly, the Republican side isn't doing what it was elected to do.
Yeah, isn't it hard to be there sometime? Because on one hand, it's so beautiful, and there are all the monuments, and it's our seat of government, and it's awe-inspiring.
Yep.
And then at the same time, there's all the other stuff, and it's just hard to be there.
Yeah, well, and listen, as much as I don't like, the craziest thing about living here in Washington is, I think it's 5 or 6 of the top 10 richest counties in America. And yes, that sucks because government employees, there's way too many of them, and they make way too much money. But personally, my wife's a real estate agent, so I'm kind of torn.
Yeah, I can see where you would be, but yeah, I mean, it is kind of crazy, and it's not.
But at the end of the day,
right?
At the end of the day, we as a totally non-biased person, at the end of the day, there's too much government spending too much money on too much crap on people. Most of them are redundant or completely screwing up their jobs if they even show up. This is, government jobs are forever. That's got to change too.
Right, and that's just the bureaucracy. Then we talk about, there are all these other things that go on top of that as well. And
those are the people. And the problem is, those are the people that won't change in an administration. These are the people that are there. Whoever's in office, they're still there.
Right, because they know how to keep their job.
Somehow we need to get rid of them too.
Right, exactly. But they know how to keep their job, right? That's why they're there, and that's one reason that makes them like that. But at the same time, we have to worry about... It's all done on the backs of the taxpayers and the people that work the hardest and, are trying, have the greatest work ethic, and that's what we're killing, and that's what we need to be worried about, is that we're killing the American work ethic, and we're killing the American dream, and that's where our real problem is going to lie.
We are, and that's a huge problem, because we are incentivizing sloth. We incentivize not working. We make it so, hey, listen, if you don't have a job, we'll extend your benefits, we'll give you more, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. If you come to this country, don't worry about a job, we'll take care of everything. The craziest thing about, this whole thing about immigration is, I don't think many people are opposed to legal immigration. And as hard as I am on illegal immigration, my mother came over to New York City from Romania in the late 60s, and her parents were always in the garment industry, and they moved to Lower Manhattan, started a garment factory, worked their asses off, and would have never considered taking a dime from the government. Never imagine it. And now it's just de rigueur. It's just what you do. You come to America and you take. The illegal immigrants that build this country. Who's got a problem with that? I certainly don't. I don't have a problem with any of it.
No.
But I also miss, and we'll never get that back. Yeah. That work ethic, that thank God I'm in America. I'm going to assimilate. I'm going to learn the culture. I'm going to learn the language. That is long gone, folks.
Yeah, I hear ya. All right, so we're running late, and we're going to run into JD and Stacy's time, and I know JD wouldn't like that. So it was great having you.
I don't want to get them mad.
I know you don't. No, they're the sweetest people in the world. But thank you for being with us, Cameron. It was a great conversation, and I think you enlightened a lot of us on a lot of different issues, and we really appreciate having you, and we'd love to have you back. You guys catch us next week right here. We'll see you on the Twitters. As they say, and we're going to get out of here so JD and Stacy can get in. But thanks so much for joining us. Next week, same time, same channel, K98 Talk. We love you guys. JD and Stacy are coming up.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 $3 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.